Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of Rouse and Roach. I'm here and in Wolverhampton, Dudley, and to my west in Ceredigion in Cardigan is Billy Roach, the most famous man at Cardigan Fair. Did you get spotted last week? Did anybody come up to you and ask for autographs?
I didn't go this year, Tom. It's shock and horror.
Oh, Billy!
It absolutely was tipping it down here over the Cardigan Fair weekend, which is near enough tradition, but over the last few years it's declined since our uni days.
We saw the peak, did we?
Yeah.
Just for people who are listening elsewhere, just give us a flavour of what Cardigan Fair really means to the town, Billy.
It's just when a load of tats comes around. That's what it is. It used to be. So I used to think it was like when Del Boy used to come to Cardigan, and he'd be there selling his goods, and he used to get some quite decent stuff. And then the next day in school, everyone would have the new latest craze. So like a couple of years ago, it was the fidget spinners, and then there was remember the two they were like marbles almost, and they used to and they made like an electric sound,
the magnets,
stuff like that, like yo-yos and blah 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 blah. Or I think that was probably as well. That's where like the loom bands and the
so it's how you've been introduced to Western culture.
Yeah, this is basically it. It's when all that stuff. So yeah, and then obviously there's the rides and stuff like that. But obviously, me, I don't know. Well, hopefully many of our listeners will know that me and you went to university together. So me and a few of the other members of our friendship group were from Cardigan. So we were all like, right, we've all got to go down to Cardigan Fair. Took you down, and that was where Tom, you met your first love of the goldfish, I think.
Oh man,
your first true love,
shark bait,
and did you get two? Did you have
I
one?
did win another one, but I don't think it was at Cardigan Fair. I won one at Cardigan Fair and one somewhere else. Yeah,
I think it was. I think there was another one in Carmarthen, a much smaller scale, by the train station.
Lots of uni students are into like drinking and going out clubbing. We were into going to fairs and winning goldfish.
Winning goldfish. Yeah. It's been in my family recently. The highlight has been, I think, in the last few years, my brother Shaw going to the fair and not being fussed on rides, doesn't care about that, but he will go around all of the donut stalls and buy the donuts and find the best donuts, and then just go and buy donuts for the whole night. He's slightly changed now that he's 18. He spends his night drinking. But yeah, no, didn't go this year. It was appalling weather. It was on. It fell on the Saturday, I think.
That's what I find weird about it as well, is that it's not on like a fixed weekend.
It's on a fixed
one day.
It's on a fixed date.
Yeah, so you could have it on a Sunday one year, then on a Wednesday.
Yeah,
Pain.
So it was. That didn't help as well, because it was on the Saturday. Stores were arriving in, because it was the weekend, obviously. All the stores and all the rides were pretty much here anyway, but they were all driving in during the day, setting up. Whereas normally what you find is if it is during the week, it's a lot quieter, because obviously all the kids are in school, so all the stores set up and stuff like that. But because all the kids were off, it was just rammed the whole way through. And then by the night, I know the cafe my parents run, it was pretty quiet here because of the weather. A few of the other establishments, they were quiet because it was just chucking it down, and people just had wasted their money and gone home.
Shame, really.
Yeah.
Shame, but hopefully the hundreds of people, or 100 people who've listened to this now will,
by this time next year,
maybe think, do you know what? Cardigan Fair is my kind of thing.
Yeah.
I need loom bands and magnets.
And anyone who comes, I will, personally go out and meet them.
Wow. Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
Okay, right, Billy. I texted you earlier in the week to tease a little feature.
Yeah.
Because now we've done 5 episodes, this being the 6th. I've got some analytics for you, and I thought we'd make it into a game.
Oh.
A little bit of a game. Some of only this one particular bit of it. So, Our podcast, Billy, has been listened to in not one, in not two, in not three, but 4 countries. Can you believe?
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Can I just clarify? Is the UK one country?
Yeah, the UK is 1 country.
Oh, okay. Just because the other day you said that about 100% of our listeners are from the UK. Just wanted to
Oh
clarify
yeah, sorry.
this.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I was incorrect because it's not actually true. Only 83% of our listeners come from the UK. So,
Okay.
Billy, it's up to you to guess. Can you guess the other 3 countries, please?
I want to say one's Australia.
Correct.
4%
4% of our listeners have come from Australia.
that's
Hello to all of them.
purely because I know my friend Stuart is currently out in Australia. Shout out to Mr.
Okay,
Bailey.
now part of my game is I'm going to tell you that he's listening in Melbourne. Is that correct?
I think so. I know he's working on a farm at the minute in Australia, and I think it was around Melbourne. So
well, if you could let us know, tweet us on @RouseRoachPod on Twitter and Instagram.
I know. At the minute he has had problems with his internet, and he's just downloaded all the podcasts. So this may come in
he's working
a
his way
month's time when he gets. But yes, please get in touch, Stuart.
He would have given up by now.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 1 of the 3. Can you guess the other 2?
I'm trying to think of all my international friends who I've told. Where are your owners from? Because it's got to be something.
Oh no.
It's nothing like nothing. I'm just thinking related to wolves. That sort of thing.
I don't think that they have access to our kind of media in China. No, I did think that maybe Mexico, but there's no sign of Mexico on there.
Okay.
One you should guess, Billy, because you've definitely got friends there.
America. I was going to say America.
America, yeah, correct. There's 2 states in America. There's California, and there's Virginia.
Neither of those are where my friends are, so that's
wow. So hello to whoever's listening in Mountain View, California.
Well,
hello.
I'm saying that they might be. I just don't realise that they're from there because obviously I went to Pennsylvania, so I just purely know them as being in Pennsylvania. But there's probably a few who may be listening.
2% of our listeners, come from Pressath, which is in Bavaria, in Germany.
Ooh.
So hello to everybody listening worldwide.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel cool, Billy?
We've crossed the borders.
Yeah, hands across the world.
Yeah.
So you also teased before we started recording, Billy, a funny story. Can
Yes.
you tell us what the funny story is, Billy?
Well, last week, as most of our UK listeners now, I can say that, will know, it was Children in Need. So
Yes.
I'm sure you were the same, Tom, with your school. We were doing lots of things throughout the week. Cake sale, name the teddy. We had a talent show, stuff like that. However, every year, every year since I was in year 12, I think, because I think I was one of the first years to do it. We've held a teachers versus pupils, or sixth form, so like the 17, 18-year-olds, sports match. So
which you're not allowed to do in England because of health and safety concerns.
Well, in Wales we just throw all that out the window, as this story will tell.
Oh God.
So last year was my first year as one of the teachers, and played against my brother and his friends in football, which was hilarious. But this year I said that we'll alternate it. So the boys picked in my brother's year, mainly because my brother was leading the push. So this year I turned around and said, right, well, the girls can have the choice of their sport, so then at least we give everyone the equal opportunity. So they picked hockey. I am terrible at hockey. Any sport which includes
So
what I call a foreign
just any sport, Billy.
Any sport, yeah, it is any sport, but particularly ones with what I call a foreign object, which is like a racket or some sort of a bat, things like that. So I volunteered to go in goal. So at least that put the pressure off other members of this teaching staff, because wearing the full hockey kit, helmet, pads, gloves, shoes, shin guards, and all that stuff, I dressed up into the goal and waddled on to the hockey field, or the AstroTurf, and it was a pretty competitive game, and a well fought game. It did end 0-0, so I can hold that claim to fame. However, within the first 2 minutes, this game, it lasted about 20 minutes because it was during lunchtime, and by the time everyone got changed and etc. etc. Within the first 2 minutes, I came out and bent my finger back.
Oh no.
Which turned purple and swelled up, so I thought I'd possibly broken my finger. Playing in a charity hockey match.
Classic Billy.
Purely because the goalie, because it was it was a youth hockey goalie kit rather than an adult's one, because it's the school's hockey kit. The gloves didn't fit me, so I was like, I'll just shove on some any old gloves. So I shoved on some just woolly gloves, went in goal. And
it's quite hard, isn't it, hockey ball?
Yeah, it is. But then it wasn't the hockey ball which hit my finger; it was the hockey stick.
Oh.
So I came rushing out as I played in goal on numerous occasions. Pretended to be a goalie for football. Came out and took out the attacking player who smashed me with his hockey stick. And my nail is still. No, I know our listeners can't see, but I'll show you after. Hopefully, Tom. My nail is still purple. And my finger, I genuinely thought I'd broken it at one point. But to the hilarity of it, the head teacher was watching and found it hilarious. So,
well, as would I.
So I was just there, and I carried on. I soldiered on because I couldn't lose face. You know, being the PE teacher and saying, I've got to go off, I've hurt my finger. No, I soldiered on and kept the clean sheet. Did start to use some dirty tactics though, because my finger was in agony and throbbing. I just kept diving on top of the ball and making sure that they couldn't hit it anytime they came close. But yes, so that was the hilarity of it. And then I also had a tattoo on Saturday.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah,
Billy Roach.
Because it is on the same. It's on the arm. The finger that I damaged was on the same arm. I had to hold my arm in various positions, but I couldn't grip my top because of my fingers being taped up. So my tattooist was also finding it hilarious because he kept whacking it when he was trying to do stuff, and he just got on with it, and so it actually caused me more pain than my tattoo.
How inconsiderate.
Yeah. So, but there we
are.
Very
funny.
But at least we didn't lose. That was the main thing.
I mean, it's not really what the people came to see. Is it a boring 0-0 draw?
No, yeah. And
imagine if Soccer Aid was like that.
No, and so we did argue. Did some of the members of staff, because it was the staff who also drive what sport we do, and I said, well, hockey, it's a really football can be tight, but when it's the hockey goals are quite small, and in football we were playing in full size goals. So you can just blast it and it's going to go in. Whereas in hockey, it is quite a cagey game. So we have said next year potentially. Well, not next year. It'll be again the boys to choose what sport they want to do. The year after, we may suggest we do netball because at least there's more scoring involved within it. But yeah, it was a fun. We raised I think over £1,000. So it was well worth it.
Very good. Right, time to move on then, Billy, to our main talking points of the day.
Yeah.
So the theme for this week's podcast was the best finals, and I did restrict you to all British sports just to, make it a little bit interesting. But I didn't pick any finals that I can actually remember. I know that you have done, and I was tempted to throw in a couple that I knew as well. But I thought, best.
All the finals I've picked. All the finals I've picked are ones I can, remember, and they're probably not the best. I went for
best personal,
more personal ones. Well, two of, because I know we text back and forth. One of the finals that you've selected, I was going to include, but I thought having three personal ones may have been a bit boring for the listeners, so I didn't do.
Well,
so I'm glad that you
mixed it up. Yeah,
I'm glad that you've chosen one. So how if this week, Tom, because normally I do seem to go first, you can start.
Oh, that's very nice of you, Billy. So I'm going to take you back to the 2nd of May 1953, Wembley Stadium, where
I remember the day.
A great day. And the Stanley Matthews FA Cup final. However, didn't score a single goal in that game, Billy. But I watched the highlights because as a football fan growing up, you always hear about the Stanley Matthews final and how he single-handedly pretty much won that game. I don't know if I've ever sat down and watched the highlights of it before, but the way that he plays football, I would urge anybody who doesn't know about Stanley Matthews to watch him, because he is a freak. He looks like a time traveller, because the stuff that he does with the football compared to everybody else, and if you look at the state of the pitch, and if you look at the ball and how big and heavy that was, and the boots and all sorts of stuff like that, he was amazing. And so this game, Blackpool against Bolton Wanderers, Stanley Matthews was playing for Blackpool at the time. Bolton raced into a 3-1 lead before Stanley Matthews decides to put a shift in and assist after assist after assist for, can you answer this question, Billy, for the player that scored a hat-trick in that final? Or are you looking at it already?
Yeah, maybe repeat the... I'm looking
Who scored the hat-trick for Blackpool? It was another Stan.
For some reason, I got Stan Collymore in my head, but it's not.
No, it wasn't Stan Collymore, unfortunately. No. Billy, you're incorrect there. It was Stan Mortensen. Because after the game, it was pretty much immediately called the Stanley Matthews final. But then he was a very humble man, Stanley Matthews, and said, "Well, this chap's just scored a hat trick. Why aren't we calling it the Stan Mortensen final?" And Stanley Matthews as well. I did a little bit of research into him as well, because he was an incredible player, because he was still playing top flight professional football when he was 50 years old.
Yeah, the name rings a bell, and I cannot, for the life of me, other than the
Stanley
final.
Matthews.
Yeah, do you know? Obviously that, but there was another reason, and I'm frantically now scanning to see if he's linked to how I know this name other than this final, but I can't seem to remember.
He did other such things. He went into Africa, I think it was, and trained schoolboys and things like that. Yeah. He toured Australia and America and Canada as a coach as well. Yeah. He's just a general football legend. He was held in such regards, the same as Bobby Charlton or Jack Charlton and Gordon Banks. He was unfortunate as well in that the Second World War really impacted his prime of his career, because otherwise he'd have been up there. But we're not really talking about Stanley Matthews. We're talking about the final itself. And to be 3-1 down in a final, and particularly a FA Cup final, I know from personal experience how gut-wrenching it can be to throw it away. Yeah. But Bolton must have thought that they'd won it 3-1 up with half an hour to go, or less than that, 22 minutes to go. Yeah. And then and they were level still in stoppage time before Perry scores the winner. A fantastic game. Yeah. I'm just looking through the Bolton team as well. Nat Lofthouse is the standout name from them. You must have heard about him. But what's pleasing as well to see is there's only English and Scottish flags on these teams as well. Not that I'm against multiculturalism, but I like, looking back into the olden days. And this was only shortly after the war as well. Yeah. So 100,000 people being gathered together would have been a nice experience. So I can first definitely
one. Cool. No, it's what a final which has been, it's probably well talked about throughout.
Yeah, and we're talking nearly 60 years later now, and we're still talking about it, and everybody still knows about it. So it's very important, I think. Anyway,
right. So I'm going to
first on the Billy.
I'm going to start with a final which. It's on a personal level to me. It was quite significant. So I'm going to start with the 2009 Championship playoff final, Tom.
Ooh, nice. I nearly chose. Well, I have chosen a playoff final, but I'll come to that in a minute.
Oh, okay. So this final was. This season was held at the end of the 2008-9 season. Now, Thomas, can you tell me who won the championship that season?
Okay, at a canter.
Yeah, it was at a canter as well. It was.
Well, we were top since it was Wolves, by the way, for anybody who wasn't sure. Well, we were top of the table from about October, but we also went for a spell where we didn't win for 7 or 8 games, which just showed you how poor the championship was that season.
So looking at the teams which were in the playoffs, so you had it was Burnley and Sheffield United which made it to the final, and they played Preston and Reading.
Did Burnley play Preston?
So no, Burnley
Yeah, I
Burnley
remember
played Reading and Preston played Sheffield United. But Sheffield United had a chance to gain automatic promotion, but blew it on the final day of the season. I think the 3 teams which were below Wolves all had a chance to get up there, which would have been Reading, Sheffield United, and who went up with you? Birmingham, is it?
But yeah, Blues, yeah.
So they all had a chance, and Birmingham were the team which got there. So, but interestingly, I didn't know. I can't remember this from the time, but Burnley were also one of the favourites to get relegated that season.
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that.
So I remember.
Did you also get to the semi-final of the League Cup that same season?
Yeah. So they were knocked out by Tottenham after extra time.
Really cruelly, I remember.
Yeah.
Because it was away goals only counted for some reason in extra time.
Extra time, yeah. So whereas Burnley, I think Burnley would have gone through, I think, on away goals in
after 90 minutes.
After 90 minutes, but then after the 90 minutes, then I think Tottenham just scored. I think Tottenham won outright because I did have that written down, but I couldn't remember the scoreline. But yeah, they were unlucky then. So obviously Burnley were on a high. From that alone, they were thought, oh well, they're flirting with. I think they were around 8th, 10th throughout the season. But then they did have as teams do, had the surge. But they were, I think, within the last 5-6 games, they were well within the playoffs. So they didn't have Preston were the team which surged into the playoffs at the end. So they beat Reading and Preston respectively over the 2 legs, and then let me just change the page. This was a couple of grandfather had passed away who took me to my first ever football match, which was Burnley against Preston. So I was hoping for the Burnley because that's a massive, derby for Burnley. But yeah, it was in Wembley. So I think it was probably the first time I went down to Wembley as well. It was in the new Wembley as well. It wasn't in the old Wembley. It was one of the first, not long after it had moved back.
It was the 3rd playoff final back in the new Wembley.
Yeah,
off the top of my head.
Off the top of your head, yeah.
I can tell you the other 2 as well if you really want to know.
Maybe that'll be the quiz later, Tom. But yeah, so yeah, and a few of the players within the Burnley team. I'd met a few of them. I know Brian Jensen, the goalie. I actually met him. I was staying in the same hotel as him when he signed for the club. Him and the defenders that left now. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Carlisle, was he there at that time?
He was there at the time, but he wasn't the defender that I met. But so I'd signed autographs and everything from Brian Jensen. So and a lot of that team carried on. Burnley won the game, and they carried on. They didn't sign. They didn't go off like Wolves did and sign loads of players when coming up. They stuck with these team. Graham Alexander was probably 36 going on 50. He was the following season. So, but yeah, anyway, back to the final. It wasn't an entertaining final, at least. It was a 1-0. Wade Elliott scored a screamer of a goal, I think. If I remember right.
I remember the goal, yeah.
We were up in the heavens. Me and my dad had gone, the whole of my extended family had gone as well because they were all Burnley season ticket holders. And, it was a really good day. I'd sprayed my hair blue and red in a Mohican. I'd planned to do that since getting the tickets. And then the rest of my family had then borrowed this spray paint. So we all went with our hair sprayed, which was quite funny because my uncle was balding or bald, so he just sprayed his bald head with this spray paint. I did try. He had a moustache, and I did try to convince him to spray his moustache, but I didn't manage to get that. But yeah, it was a good. It wasn't. I'm going to say the most entertaining game. It was
no, but that's like I very nearly picked the Wolves playoff final in 2003 because of the same reason. It was the first time that we'd all gone to a match together. Like I'd been to an away game and I'd been to, we all go to the home games and stuff, but to go on a big journey to Cardiff for the Millennium Stadium and then when you're all there, it just becomes automatically more special. If you win, because we had the same, of course, with the semi-final in the FA Cup this year, and it wasn't the same, but there were still moments in that in itself that were special. But
it was, but then within, there was, you go to a football match, there was a red card. There were actually looking at this, there were 2 red cards. One was for a double yellow for 2 blatant handballs after quick succession, which I remember that red card, but I didn't realise, and I didn't realise until reading up after, I was one of the Sheffield United substitutions was sent off after the final whistle for swearing and pushing referee Mike Dean, which I didn't know. At the time, obviously we wouldn't have noticed because we were just going crazy because Burnley had gone up. And waiting for it, but that had happened. Just
for younger listeners as well, because I think if you're at the age of about 16, 17, you assume that Burnley are always in the top flight, which I suppose when your grandfather was watching them in the 50s and 60s, they were one of the top teams in the country. Did they win the league in 1960s?
So it was 33. It was the first time Burnley had been to the Premier League by winning that game, but it was 33 years since they were in the top flight division. So they were in the first division. Because I'd looked after, because Sheffield United now obviously have come, but they're in the Premier League this season as well. So I had a look, at what had happened to both teams afterwards. So Burnley were in this Premier League for the one season after, and they went straight back down, finishing 18th. But they lost. Owen Coyle left in January.
During that season,
and I think, if I remember rightly, it was not. I don't know if it was at the start of January, but I think it was towards the end of January. So they lost their manager. He went to Bolton Wanderers, which in itself was a bit of a. Yeah. It wasn't. It left a sour taste in the Burnley fans' mouth, and because he left at that time, when they got someone in, they'd already lost the transfer. They were down. They weren't as strong as they were when they came up the following the next time when they returned in 2016-17, because when Dyche had come in and they won the championship and then came up, and then they went on to qualify for Europe. So it wasn't. But then Sheffield United, I didn't realise they went from bad to worse. They went down to League One 2 years later. They had 6 seasons in League One. They lost another playoff final.
I think I'm right in saying they've never won a playoff final.
Yeah, they've got to quite a few. When I was quickly looking, I think you are right, Tom, because they lost to Huddersfield, but they did then get back to the Premier League this season after finishing second in the Championship, and they currently sit 5th behind. And that's behind.
I've got a feeling though that they'll be like Hull or Wigan, perhaps, when they first went up and they were amazing for the first month or two of the season. Everyone was like, "Whoa, they're gonna finish 5th. It's gonna be amazing." And then they couldn't buy a win after.
But at the end of the day, it's this, they've got similar to you guys last season. As long as they stay up.
I think they'll stay up now. They've given themselves a head start. Unlike Norwich and Villa, I think they're going to have a battle all season.
Definitely. And Burnley now that they're mid-table, so both these teams could they season after season fight to stay in the Premier League. That's their main remit. But it's nice to see that after all these years they're both finally back. Into the Premier
teams.
League.
It was starting to get there with the Premier League. I just need Leeds and Nottingham Forest and Sheffield Wednesday instead of Bournemouth, Watford and Brighton. They can go. They're not Premier League teams.
They're not Premier League.
But anyway,
moving on, Tom.
From one playoff final to another, we're going to go down a division. I was thinking of how to introduce this as well, because I could have said it's a final involving a Manchester team in 1999.
Yeah.
But it's not in Barcelona. It's at Wembley. So it's Manchester City against Gillingham.
Okay.
And this, I think, is hands down the most dramatic of comebacks. Although, I suppose if you're a Manchester United fan, you would argue that Barcelona, only 4 days before this, would be more dramatic, beating Bayern Munich in the Champions League final. But Gillingham and Manchester City had been relegated from the Premier League down to what was then Division 2.
Yeah.
And now League One, which is difficult to believe. I think for for younger listeners who, if they've only been following football since they were if they were born 10 years ago, they probably think that
Man City have
Man City have always been amazing, but in our lifetime, Wolves lost the Division 1 title a couple of seasons after this to Manchester City because that was the sort of level of team that they were. They were a bit like, I don't know, what's it, a sort of a yo-yo team, a bit like Albion or somebody like that. They would never finish above 10th in the Premier League, and they, if they stayed up, they'd all be very, very happy.
Yeah.
But they faced, and that's sorry, I keep jumping from thing to thing, but that's why Man City fans now, they sing "We're Not Really Here," because that started when they were in Division 2, when they were playing Bury and Gillingham and all teams like this, and they were just singing, "We're not really here. This is not really happening." But now they sing it because they're winning titles and they're playing in Europe every season, stuff like that. It's a lovely story. But anyway, the game itself was boring for 8 nights of the game. It was 0-0. The game was going absolutely nowhere, and it looked like it was one of those games that's destined to be extra time, penalties, and eventually it will be decided by a very, very tight margin. However, Carlos Arba, who incidentally played for Sheffield United in the 2003 playoff final, he put Gillingham into a lead. Then, on the 81st minute, Robert Taylor, who coincidentally signed for Wolves a season after and was absolutely hopeless, he put Gillingham into a 2-0 lead. So it's 87 minutes, it's 2-0 to Gillingham.
Yeah.
Lovely. Tony Pulis, the manager of Gillingham at the time, can relax, put his feet up. Lovely. Job done.
Yeah.
Then, on the 90th minute, Kevin Horlock for Manchester City grabs what everybody assumes to be a consolation goal.
Yeah.
At the time, you can see on the footage as well, there's barely any Man City fans in the stand. They've all gone.
Yeah.
Noel Gallagher tells the story that he's already left the ground and he's almost in a taxi thinking forget it, but then he hears a cheer and he thinks, oh, I might go back.
Yeah.
So he does, and then in the 5th minute of added time, so very much Gillingham are holding on for their dear lives, and it falls to Paul Dickoff at the back post, who slams it past his best man, Vince Bartra, the goalkeeper. They were both best men at each other's wedding, which is a cool little story.
Yeah.
To make it 2-2 after 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Gillingham then are dead on their feet because they've won the game basically with 3 or 4 minutes to go, and then Man City, they can't get a goal in extra time, but they win on penalties then, thanks to Nicky Weaver saving 3 of the Gillingham's penalties. Paul Dickoff actually missed his penalty in the shootout as well. It hit off both posts. It was very, very good. Yeah. But then it's funny, and that's why people talk about typical City, is because things like this, where they don't do things the easy way, but when they do it, it's very, very entertaining.
So, like when they won the league and
Oh man.
But exactly. It sounds like a very good start to their rise to the top.
Well, yeah, because they were only in Division 2 for 1 season. If they'd have stayed down there, God knows what would have happened, because they were able to hold on to quite a lot of the players that came down to that division with them. They had Joe Royal as well in charge, who was was a Premier League manager really, but he was in Division 2 at the time.
Yeah.
They had that huge stadium, Main Road, that they were able to fill every week still, away from home. And that's what lots of, ourselves and Leeds fans and Sheffield United fans probably, maybe not towards the end of their tenure in League One in the 6 years, but it is quite an enjoyable experience to go down to that level, because you don't realise the size of your club until you're put in a situation like that. When we went to Warsaw and we had 2 of the 4 stands given to us because we could fill it. Yeah. And everywhere we went, and when away teams came to us, they were taking photos of the ground. They're like, "Oh my god, it's amazing! It's like massive." And we're like, and then we go to Stevenage away, and you can see a fairground in the background above the stand because it's so small. But yeah, Man City against Gillingham. That was, I think, even though I can vaguely remember that happening, but I wouldn't say that it's and that was the only one in my lifetime. So we'll move back to you, Billy.
Right,
pass it over to you.
I'm gonna divert from football for the time being, and I'm gonna go to tennis. So this is the 2008 Wimbledon men's singles final, which was held at Wimbledon, obviously.
No way.
and it was held by. It's part of the much storied Federer v Nadal rivalry, which for a long period, definitely through the majority of my childhood, I can just remember. Federer v Nadal again. Here we go.
Where were they in their careers at this point? How old were they?
I haven't written that down, but hang on. If I check on,
they're still playing now. Then it was
they're
11 years ago.
Yeah, they're still playing now.
Mid-20s. So.
Yeah, I know it was in the peak, probably a peak of Nadal's career. The two men had combined to win 14 of the previous 16 Grand Slam titles by that point. So,
right.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't know how many they've won since.
They were doing all right.
But I think I can't find it in a minute. But I'm sure Federer had just come back from an injury, and so 2 months. Federer had contracted mononucleosis, however you pronounce that.
An injury.
Yeah, in December 2007, and received medical clearance to train normally and compete in the February, 5 days before the Dubai Tennis Championship. So he'd not long been back. Some people were saying he hadn't physically recovered and wouldn't be able to compete for Wimbledon. Others were disagreeing. But so there was touch, especially for Federer. It was but they pretty much had a straight route to the final. There wasn't. I don't think at the time they didn't have much competition get into the final. They were, unlike now where you've got the likes of Djokovic, Murray, and Tsonga. And
they were slightly too young, weren't they, at the point?
Yeah, so these guys, and Nadal was pretty young himself. I think there is quite a big age gap between the two of them. Federer just seems to knock it out, and Nadal's obviously had his injuries recently. But it's why. Go on.
No, go on, carry on.
It's considered. So they were top tier, number 1 and 2, obviously, hence why they were, and it's considered one of the greatest tennis matches of all time. Nadal bested Federer. It was 6-4, 6-4, 6-7, 6-7, and then 9-7. So it had to go into.
I remember seeing the final set, because it finished very late. Because usually Wimbledon finals, in that period, I wouldn't be able to watch because they're playing cricket, and they'd finish at sort of like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock. But this was before the roof was put on centre court as well, wasn't it?
So that's what I was going to go on to.
I think there might have been a rain delay or something as well.
There was 2 rain delays. So they were supposed to start at 2, and it was delayed for 30 minutes. Then the game started. Nadal won the first 2 sets, and then Federer was leading the 3rd set. And then they had an 80-minute break, so they were off the court for nearly an hour and a half. And then Federer came back on. Federer won the 3rd set that he was leading, and then the following set.
They ended up playing in the dark, didn't they?
Yeah.
Pretty much, it was because there was no lights at all at Wimbledon at that point.
He actually Federer saved 2 championship points within the 4th because both those 2. Set, because he won 7-6, 7-6. It went to a tie break, so Nadal had a chance to win the championship then. But Nadal had an opportunity to win the title on his next 2 serves with a score at 5-2. But he hit a double fault, so then that led to it getting back to 7-7, and then it was just from there. But it was up until this year's final. It was. August singles final for time in terms of time played, so not let alone breaks, because obviously now the Wimbledon final they don't stop it for rain because of the roof, but it was only overtaken this year by which involved Federer, where he lost to Djokovic. So it's still the longest match final in terms of with the breaks, but in terms of time played, it actually ended at 9:15, Tom, which, like you say,
I remember them saying as well. And it's the same with cricket when you watch games that go on in the dark. There's a famous Test match in Pakistan where they're basically playing in the dark, and they say it does not come across on the telly how dark it actually is because the mirrors inside the camera or whatever enhances the light.
Yeah.
But I just remember the speed at which both of those players were playing. So deep into a game, hours and hours into this game, and they were still. Baseline to
so there's some
side to side.
Some statistics for you, just because it's here and I can easily read it. The fastest serve were 129 and 126 for Federer and Nadal respectively. Average first serve was 117, 112. Second serve, was 193. So Federer was the, but just they were, they were just. Returning these as well. Where's the return? Is the return? No, they haven't got any statistics for a return or anything. But yeah, it was. I remember watching it, and it, when you're watching it, you're like, oh yeah, it gets thrown around a lot. Oh yeah, this is going to be the greatest whatever final. Yeah. But it seems to have stood the test of time.
For 10 years.
For over it's 11 years now since it was, and I think these two will go down as.
Oh yeah.
The greatest, or up there with the greatest within the sport, because they have pushed it on. The reason why now we have so many good tennis players who are winning various other championships is because of these two excelling in the sport. Yeah. But yes.
Right. So my next one and my final one is also a record for the longest ever match.
Yeah.
This time in snooker.
Yes.
The 1985 World Snooker Championship final between Steve Davis and Dennis Taylor. I watched the whole of the last frame in the summer of this game.
Yeah.
And it makes me nostalgic of a time that I didn't even live in. I loved just the thought of this.
So this,
the total match time.
Go on.
There was a slight delay. Go on, Billy. You interject. Go
on. So this, I was going to pick this as well, purely because my nan and my mum's mum, she was a massive snooker fan, so this was the other final that I had for sentimental values. Just wanted to interject before you carried on because I didn't think I'd get it in.
So I take, how long was your tennis match again?
I think it was 4 hours 50 minutes or 4 hours 48 minutes.
Okay.
I think off the top of my head.
I'll take your 4 hours 50 minutes and I'll raise it by 10 hours. 14 hours and 50 minutes this game was for a best of 35 frame match, which I suppose is not too out of the ordinary for a frame takes usually about half an hour or so, something like that.
Yeah, it's on average.
To say it up for you, Steve Davis had been the World Championship winner in 1981, 83 and 84. Dennis Taylor, the best that he'd ever done was the runner-up in 1979. Steve Davis was number 1 in the world. Dennis Taylor number 11 in the world. But what I love about this is that it was on terrestrial television. There were only 4 channels at the time. So there were 18.5 million people watching this.
Yeah.
And it finished at 23 minutes past midnight.
Yeah.
On a Sunday. Can you imagine? Can you imagine nowadays people doing that? And then of course everybody goes into work the next day and everybody talks about it. Yeah. That's what I miss. And I didn't even live through this.
No, I was just thinking that. Can you imagine? Snooker is not, unfortunately, as popular as it used to be, but it is held on terrestrial telly still. But I can't imagine my classes coming in and just being excited about snooker. Yeah. Because of all the the fortnight and this and whatever. It's just,
man, there's too much choice. We need to be limited and we need to be made to watch stuff like this because then this is what brings the country together and things like that. When you're all like we talked about the Olympics before, about how everybody was watching it and everybody was involved in it, and then for a couple of months everybody was the best of friends. But then anyway, so the game itself, Steve Davis rushes into quite a big lead.
Yeah.
7 frames up at the end of the first session, 7-0. So the thing with snooker is you can't you might be playing the best game of your life, but if you have to break and then the other person gets on the reds, you're screwed. You've lost that frame basically. You haven't got a chance to get back into it. You have to rely on a mistake from the other player.
Just to clarify, so you're saying it's 7, just in case people aren't that clued up on snooker. So snooker is the finals are a best of. So it's the first
best of 35.
So it's first 35. So it's first to 19. So going 7-0 up, there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But he's a very strong favourite at that point as well.
Oh
being
yeah.
number one
Without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah.
So Dennis Taylor then gets back into it, and it's very, very tight then, and they're sort of taking the odd frame off each other. He gets back to within one frame, and then after 34 frames, it's 17 each, so it's going to the 35th frame, which doesn't happen very often. I haven't looked at how many times it does happen, but not very often. So the final frame, I would urge everybody, if you have any interest in sport, to watch at least the last. Watch the black.
Yeah.
Watch when they're trying to pot the black, because it's the most tense sport you will ever watch. Even if you don't understand snooker, they have to try and pot the black, obviously, to win the game.
Yeah, the points are not level, but whoever pots the black wins.
62-59. So Steve Davis is actually winning on the black, but he needs to pot the black to win, because it's 62-59. So if he can't pot it, he's got to make sure he hides it in a way that the other player can't pot it, basically. And Dennis Taylor leaves Steve Davis on. He leaves this opportunity for him to pot the ball. All he's got to do is cut it finally, which means I don't need to explain what cut it is. You can have a look at what it means. But
glance the ball
into the pocket, and Dennis Taylor sits down, head in his hands. He thinks he's lost the game. The other one, Steve Davis.
Yeah.
Misses it. He panics so much about undercutting it that he overcuts it and he misses the pocket completely, and sets up a really, really easy pot for Dennis Taylor to put in. And when he does it, it's a very, very pleasing moment.
Yeah.
Because for a massive underdog, and the way that he celebrates as well is quite funny, because he just wags his finger, not towards Steve Davis, but towards one of his friends. But the thing with snooker as well is that they're all sort of mates with each other. They all go on these tours all the way around.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like there was a bit of rivalry between a few of them.
Yeah.
But it was if you haven't watched it, you need to go.
Yeah,
watch it
I would recommend it, because I see, it's what snooker is one of those ones. There's plenty of finals as well where someone will just go and do there's not been many like maximums, but like just go off and it'll be tight the whole way through. It'll be like you say, the whole way through the game it'll be get to 17 all or close to, and then someone will just go and smash a century or something like that, and just they're like, well, the opposite, not the opposite of that, but they'll just do a masterclass of a solo performance, whereas that was a cagey one.
But it's difficult to put into if you don't understand about snooker either. For a whole final to go down to one ball, when you're talking about 35 frames and how many points are available within those 35 frames, for it to come down to one ball it's not even like a penalty shootout in football. It's much higher pressure than that.
The closest you can get to it is darts, where it's coming down to a final dart or something like that. Those sort of things. That would be the only comparison you could think of, or like in golf where they do like the shootout and it's whatever they've got to do. But even so, snooker doesn't get for the the talent that you need to do that. People, because the pockets are tiny. I know me and you have gone and played snooker a few times. Attempted to play snooker. I would say.
Well, you can play snooker.
The pocket, for our American fans which are listening, if you take your pool size pocket and then probably reduce it to a third of the size, and then take the balls and then put them back to a normal size, it's literally you've got to hit it perfect every single time.
Tight,
But yes,
right, we're gonna have to move on, Billy. We're a bit pushed for time now, so if you could just hit me with your last one.
Yeah, well, I thought we were, so I thought I'd leave the one that you definitely want me to gloss over to last. Yeah, it's going. I'm sorry, Tom, but I had to put it in. So it was another person. It's the 2012.
That's all we've got time for today. Thank you for listening. Go on.
It's the 2012 Champions League final, which.
I'm just going to take my headphones out.
Yeah, you can take your headphones out now. So this was Chelsea versus Bayern Munich. So backstory to this: Chelsea reached the final in 2008, which was against Manchester United in Moscow. My dad and sister went to this final, leaving.
They chose the wrong one to go to, didn't they? Really?
Yeah, that was a hard final to watch because I was sat there at home going. I was studying for my GCSEs and I had an exam on the day, so I couldn't leave to go and watch. So I was sat at home going, if I want us to win,
It should have been me.
but if they win, my dad's now gonna be just every time. So yeah, but then 4 years later, then we got there and bleeding up to that final, our manager had been sacked because he was useless. We had Villas Boas. He got
man.
Yeah, so he got sacked, and he got sacked. I think a couple of games after, not long after, as losing 3-1 to Napoli.
Yeah, I remember that because I think he got sacked after that tie. I don't know whether
it wasn't straight after that time because we lost to your main rivals, West Brom.
That's right. Because I remember.
He got sacked after that game.
Yeah,
we were still.
You can't lose to West Brom. That's inexcusable.
So
inexcusable.
So we were in uni at the time. I remember watching the semi-final with you. In my room, which was against Barcelona, which was where Terry got sent off, and Torres, the famous Gary Neville orgasm goal came from. Obviously, before that, Di Matteo came in and overturned for us obviously to get to the final. Overturned the Napoli 3-1.
Very much like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer with Manchester United, just sort of an old boy coming in.
Yeah.
Come on, lads, let's have a lovely time for the next couple of months. And whoops, we've won the Champions League.
Yeah, and then similar to Solskjaer, Solskjaer's currently still in with a job, but I think it was around this time where Di Matteo got sacked the following year after us winning the Champions League.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't on a permanent contract, was he, when he won the Champions League? And then it was sort of...
No, we've kind
of got to give him the manager's job now.
But yeah, I'm not going to waste too much time, but purely because, like, if you look... So we didn't have suspended from...
Terry was missing,
Terry was suspended. Ivanovic got suspended,
famously.
Which was famous because he didn't realise he got suspended because Jeff Shreves then told him in a post-match interview, which was from the Barcelona game, which we both found hilarious. Raul Morales was suspended for us. Ramirez, another big player for us. But I didn't realise Bayern were missing David Alaba, Bad Stuber, and Luis Gustavo, which were big players for them as well. But we were in their backyards.
That's the most impressive bit.
Got there. We were playing. Ryan Bertrand made his debut.
I know. Well, my dad, every time we've seen Ryan Bertrand play for Southampton, he says, "Who's that?"
Yeah.
I said, "He's got a Champions League winners medal, don't you know?"
Yeah.
He's amazing.
So he was amazing. He was playing left midfield in front of Ashley Cole. We had David Luiz playing centre back for us, which I loved David Luiz. I thought he had moments of brilliance, but we had Boswinger playing right back, and he was just the bait. Kalu was up front playing right. Mikel was playing. This team was my dad's worst nightmare.
Makeshift.
It's a running joke in my family. My dad will pick a player who he'll just scream and shout at, and basically this was the team. To put it into perspective as well, we had Ross Turnbull on the bench.
Wow.
So for us to win the Champions League with Ross Turnbull, Romeo as well, who's now gone to Southampton as well. I think he's their captain as well.
Oriel Romeo, yeah.
Sturridge was there. Daniel Sturridge has got a...
Gary Cahill, was he there? Did he move from Bolton to Chelsea that season?
So he,
imagine
luckily,
that. Started pre-season training for Bolton and ended up winning the Champions League.
Yeah, so
Insane.
So famously we went 1-0 down in the 87th minute. Bayern had dominators for the whole
scenes
game.
In our flat.
Yeah, I wasn't at uni. I'd come home to watch it, so I'd missed all of this. And I remember you guys telling me when I came back the next day that you'd already pre-planned that you were going to go and get newspapers and plaster my wall, or my door.
I can't remember that.
With my door with all the papers, which obviously would have been impressed. But then the god which is Didier Drogba scored an absolute corker of a header in the 88th, literally near enough straight after. 5 minutes later scored this amazing header. And then it went into extra time. I think, if I remember rightly, they had a penalty in extra time as well. Drogba fouled Ribery in the box, which injured him. But then Robin took the penalty, but it was saved by Cech. So Cech actually saved. I think
Cech made one. He saved Messi's penalty in the semi-final.
And then he saved. I think he saved both the Bayern penalties as well. I don't think they missed. I think he saved them both. So he got, looking down, Drogba was awarded man of the match purely because he scored the header and then went on to score. Which at the time was supposed to be his final kick for Chelsea. He did later come back and not ruin. Some people argue he ruined it, but Cech was awarded the fans' man of the match, which I think, looking back, he probably deserved it even more so. Drogba led the team with those goals, but
what that final be remembered for is John Terry in his full kit, collecting the trophy. So did he? Was it just? It wasn't just him. Was it Lampard did pick it up as well?
Lampard did pick it up. But what really annoys me about that moment was you've got Buswinger, and I can see it now because they're on the website. Is Buswinger is stood in the middle of Terry and Lampard, just going absolutely crazy. In every photo, he's just there near. Which he has. He's won the Champions League, and he is going to be over the moon and stuff. But I was so glad when we quickly shipped him off after. But just reading through, because at this point, I think now they've changed it, where if they're suspended, they can now play in the final. I think if they've had yellow cards, I think if they get not sent off, if they haven't been sent, but if they reset, I think they reset the suspensions, because that's why
Roy Keane and Paul Scholes missed out in '99, didn't they? Because of that.
So I think now they've changed that. So. It was reviewed 3 years later and changed, but they did. It's here that UEFA had confirmed before the game that Terry would be allowed to lift the trophy. So it would have been hilarious if he had been told he couldn't lift the trophy and then did that on in typical fashion. But was, I had to put it in purely. It's not
talk me through as well, because I can't imagine Wolves ever winning the Champions League, although it might happen. But has it been difficult since that moment to think, well, the only thing that could come close to that is to do it again?
Yeah.
So I can't see. I mean, unless you were to win the treble or something like that, I can't see how watching football could be interesting. You've done it.
Yeah, it's definitely for my dad. I think ever since he's just been, he's pretty much negative any time we watch Chelsea. But like now, this season now as a Chelsea fan is probably one of the most exciting because the youth's coming through and the talent. Whereas before it was we were buying the players and cycling through, because the season after we weren't brilliant, and then. We've not really. I know we've won the league. When Conte came in, and we were like, "Oh, that's exciting because we've got this new system which no one in the Premier League's playing." But then and
now everybody plays three at the back.
Yeah, and then that quickly faded, and then we had Sarri ball last season, and that faded even quicker. So I'd say this is probably, like you say, the most excited I've been, because if we go on, to achieve something with this team, whether that will be winning the Premier League, winning a cup, or something with Lampard in charge, especially, I think it will probably be even more special. Especially, for me, Di Matteo is obviously an ex-Chelsea player, but he was there or thereabouts, when I started watching. So I remember playing Football Manager, and him having his leg when his leg was broken. So he was a player that I didn't really care too much about because he didn't play for the first season, so I was like, well, he can go. Yeah. Whereas
I think it's so funny as well that Abramovich spent so much money on these top quality managers, and then it's just some bloke who does it.
And it's the same now, we are still in early doors of the season, like we said earlier, but we've pumped all this money into buying all these players, and hilariously, we've now got a transfer ban because of us buying young players.
Yeah. So
it's good to see that the reason for the ban has paid off as well, if that makes sense. These players that we did buy young are starting to shine and come through. So hopefully, long may it continue.
Yes.
But yes, so But anyway, Tom, let's move on.
Right. Well, unfortunately, Billy, I think we're gonna postpone the quiz for a week because we've been talking for nearly an hour already. So we'll roll it over to next week, and we'll leave it there for now. So if you do want to get in touch with us, you can do it on Twitter at @RouseRoach.
Wait, Thomas. Wait. You need to tell us what we're doing next week.
Oh gosh, hang on. Oh god, I'm really disorganised. Anyway, so let me just do. I'll say that then while I'm looking for this. So if you want to get in touch with us, you need to tweet us at RouseRoachPod, or you can email us. I don't think we've had a single email yet, Billy, but I'll read it anyway. rouseroach.pod@gmail.com, or Instagram if anybody can do that. Because yes. Actually, Billy, I remember why that we're not doing this. It's because you're coming here.
Oh yes, that will be a very special.
You're coming here, so we're going to record it on Sunday, I think it is. Yeah. And we're going to talk about how to fix football.
Cool.
How to fix football.
Sounds entertaining. So slightly different to to how we've been doing it, where we've been talking about our favourite moments and stuff. So it should be a nice, refreshing change. Yeah, we might even film it and put it on YouTube. I don't know what the face reveal. Okay, well, put a bag on your head or something. Yeah. But yeah. Okay, cool. Right. Well, thank you very much to everybody who's listened so far. It's the longest one yet. Hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Say goodbye, Billy. Goodbye. Bye-bye.